Let's start with a horror story, but not the kind with monsters under the bed, the kind with math. The year is 1923. You are standing in a bakery in Berlin. The smell of yeast and warm flour is the same as it has always been. The baker is the same man you have known for 10 years. The counter is the same scratched wood. But the chalkboard on the wall behind him doesn't say 2 marks, it says 200 billion marks. You stand in line. You wait. The line moves slowly. People are shuffling forward, clutching wheelbarrows and suitcases, not filled with clothes, but with stacks of paper currency. By the time you reach the front of the counter, 12 minutes later, the baker sighs. He picks up a piece of chalk, crosses out the number, and writes 250 billion. You just lost 20% of your life savings while waiting to buy a carbohydrate. History books call this the collapse of the Weimar Republic. They show you pictures of children flying kites made of worthless banknotes. They tell you it was chaos. They tell you the system broke. But here is the uncomfortable truth that almost everyone misses. The system didn't break. Look closely at the scene again. The bakery didn't close. The flour didn't vanish into thin air. The ovens didn't stop working. The farmer who grew the wheat was still farming. The miller was still milling. The supply chain of calories, the actual physical economy, was functioning perfectly fine. The baker was fine. The farmer was fine. The only thing that broke was the paper in your pocket. The only thing that evaporated was the collective hallucination that those printed rectangles stored any value at all. We have a bad habit of confusing currency collapse with system collapse. They are not the same. In fact, they are often opposites. When a currency dies, the world doesn't end. The buildings don't fall down. The sun still rises. The economy just reprices. And in that violent, terrifying moment of repricing, wealth isn't destroyed. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes form. Wealth works the same way. It is transferred. It moves from the holder of paper to the holder of things. It moves from the saver to the owner. It moves from the rule follower to the rule maker. I have spent years analyzing the autopsies of dying currencies, from Germany to Venezuela, from Zimbabwe to Lebanon, and I found a pattern. Large systems don't collapse randomly. They converge. They follow a script that is almost boring in its predictability.
And they reward the same structural positions every single time. Most people spend their lives preparing for the end of the world. The smart money prepares for the transfer of the world. If the world doesn't end, but ownership changes, the only question that matters is who always ends up on the winning side.
To understand the transfer, we first have to dismantle the Hollywood version of the apocalypse that lives in your head. When I say monetary collapse, you probably imagine Mad Max. You imagine leather jackets, desert wastelands, and people fighting over a can of dog food. You imagine a total cessation of order. That is a survivalist fantasy. It is dramatic, but historically, it is nonsense. Real collapse is much more bureaucratic. It is much quieter. It looks less like a war zone and more like a really frustrating trip to the DMV, combined with a heart attack when you look at your bank balance. Let's look at the data. When the German mark went to zero in 1923, Germany didn't cease to exist. In fact, within a decade, it had rebuilt itself into an industrial and military superpower capable of challenging the entire world. The factories remained, the infrastructure remained, the workforce remained. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the oil fields in Siberia didn't dry up. The aluminum smelters didn't melt down, they were just retitled. One day they belonged to the state. The next day they belonged to a handful of oligarchs who understood the transition better than the public did. The system doesn't disappear, it reorganizes. This is critical to understand because if you prepare for Mad Max, you will buy the wrong things. You will buy bunker gear and freeze-dried food thinking you need to survive outside the system. But if the system persists, you don't need to survive outside of it. You need to survive inside of it while it violently changes the rules of the game. The mistake most people make is believing that money is the economy. Money is not the economy. It is the scorecard. It is the language we use to communicate value. When the language breaks down, when the words lose their meaning, we don't stop talking, we just switch languages. In Venezuela, when the bolivar became trash, people didn't stop buying groceries, they just stopped using bolivars. They switched to US dollars, to crypto, to gold, to barter. The economy continued, but the pricing mechanism shifted. Those who held the old pricing mechanism, the local currency, were wiped out. Their purchasing power was deleted. Those who held assets priced in the new mechanism, real estate, foreign currency, commodities, kept their score. The tragedy of the middle class in every single one of these events is that they believe the state when it says, "We will fix the money." They wait for the government to repair the scorecard. By the time they realize the scorecard is broken beyond repair, the game is already over. The system reorganizes around those who hold the real assets, and it discards those who hold the paper promises. It is not personal, it is structural.
So, if the paper in your pocket is just a temporary scorecard, how long does the game usually last? This brings us to the concept of the fiat life cycle. We tend to think of our current currency, whether it's the dollar, the euro, or the yen, as a permanent feature of reality. We think of it like a mountain range. It was here before us, and it will be here after us. But history tells a different story. The average life expectancy of a fiat currency, a currency backed by nothing but government decree, is 27 years. 27 years. Some last longer, like the British pound, though it has been devalued countless times. Some last far less, flashing into existence and burning out in a few years of hyperinflation. But they all follow a biological arc. They are born, they age, they accumulate distortions, they develop cancer, and eventually they die. The US dollar in its current form, unpegged from gold, floating freely, was born in 1971. That makes it middle-aged, maybe even geriatric in currency years. Now, do not misunderstand me. I am not saying the dollar will collapse next Tuesday. I am not saying you should panic sell everything and move to a cabin in the woods. That is fear-mongering, and it is usually wrong. What I am saying is that systems age, and as they age, they lose signal integrity. In the beginning, a currency is trustworthy. One unit of currency buys a predictable amount of labor. The signal is clear. But over time, governments, always, without exception, succumb to the temptation to print more than they produce. They spend more than they earn. They make promises they cannot keep mathematically. So they print the difference. This dilutes the signal. The currency starts to glitch. Prices rise, not because things are more valuable, but because the measuring stick is shrinking. This is the 27-year illusion. We live inside a window of stability that feels permanent, so we assume it is eternal. But mathematically, we are always drifting toward the reset. The "this time is different" crowd will tell you that modern central banks are smarter. They have algorithms, they have PhDs, they have learned from the past. But the Romans thought they were smarter too. They clipped the coins. The French during the Revolution thought they were smarter. They printed the assignats. The Weimar Germans thought they were smarter. The technology changes, the psychology never does. Governments don't print money to fix the economy. They print money to save themselves. When given the choice between defaulting on their promises, which is political suicide, or devaluing the currency, which is a silent tax, they choose devaluation every single time. It is not a conspiracy, it is an incentive structure. We are living in a system that is programmed to debase itself. The clock is ticking. The question isn't if the reset happens. The question is how the accounting gets settled.
Let's go back to the idea of the transfer. If wealth is not destroyed, but transferred, how does the mechanism actually work? How does the money move from your pocket to theirs without a robbery taking place? It happens through the lag. When new money is printed, it enters the system at the top. It goes to the government, the banks, and the large corporations first. They get the money at its current value. They use it to buy assets, stocks, real estate, commodities. By the time that money trickles down to the wage earner, to you, prices have already risen. The currency has already been diluted. You get the money last. You get the money after the repricing event has started. This creates a massive divergence. The winners in a currency crisis are the ones who owe money. The losers are the ones who are owed money. Let me explain that because it sounds backward. We are taught that being in debt is bad and having savings is good. But in a high inflation, dying currency scenario, a debtor is a genius. Imagine you owe $1 million on a piece of farmland. Hyperinflation hits. The currency collapses. A loaf of bread now costs $1 million. You sell one loaf of bread, you pay off your mortgage. You now own the farm, debt-free. This actually happened in Weimar Germany. It happened in Zimbabwe. It happened in the American South after the Civil War. Inflation is a massive wealth transfer from creditors, people who saved, to debtors, people who borrowed. The bank gets paid back in worthless paper. You keep the hard asset. Crises don't punish immorality, they punish bad positioning. Look at the Venezuelan stock market during their worst hyperinflation. The chart looks like a rocket ship. It went up thousands of percent in a year. Did Venezuelan companies become thousands of percent more profitable while the country starved? No. The stock market went up because the money went down. This is the equity paradox. Stocks are not pieces of paper. They are legal claims on real assets, factories, land, inventory, machines. Real assets float. Paper currency sinks. When the flood comes, you don't want to be holding the water, cash. You want to be holding the boat, equity. It feels deeply unfair. It violates our sense of justice. But the market doesn't care about justice. It cares about physics. When the unit of account fails, the real decouples from the nominal. Nominal wealth, numbers on a screen, explodes upwards, but real wealth, purchasing power, collapses for anyone not holding the assets. If you are standing still, holding cash, you are not safe. You are the fuel that is being burned to keep the asset prices high.
So, if cash is the fuel, what is the shield? I am going to describe 5 categories of assets that have historically survived these resets. But before I do, I need to give you a very specific warning. If you are listening to this with a pen and paper, trying to write down a shopping list of what to buy to get rich, you are missing the point. Do not treat this as investment advice. Do not treat this as a hot tip. Treat this as a structural analysis of history. Each of these categories has saved people, and each has destroyed people who used them wrong. Category 1. The anti-fiat, precious metals, gold and silver. The internet loves to hype gold as the way to get rich. That is the wrong mindset. Gold is not an investment. Gold is an opt-out button. It is the only financial asset that is not someone else's liability. In Turkey, right now, gold deposits are skyrocketing, not because people want to make a profit, but because they want to freeze their labor in time. Gold defends your position. It doesn't necessarily attack. It is a bunker, not a business. Category 2. The exit valve, foreign currencies. When a local currency dies, the immediate reaction is to flee to a stronger one. In Lebanon, the nurse who kept her savings in lira lost 98% of her life's work. The nurse who converted her savings to US dollars preserved 100% of it. They did the exact same work. They had the exact same discipline. One used the exit valve, the other didn't. This isn't about profit, it's about liquidity in a system that still functions. Category 3. Productive equity. This is the one that confuses people. In Venezuela, the stock market went up 3,400% in a year. Why? Because stocks are not pieces of paper. They are legal claims on real assets, machines, factories, inventory. But there is a catch. Not all stocks survive. The companies that thrived were the ones with export capacity. They sold goods to the outside world. They earned hard currency, dollars, and paid their expenses in soft currency, bolivars. That is the ultimate arbitrage. If you own a company that earns in a living currency and spends in a dying one, you don't just survive, you capture the spread. Category 4. Consumables, tactical liquidity. In post-war Germany, cigarettes became the currency, not because everyone smoked, but because they were durable, divisible, and scarce. Soap, alcohol, coffee, batteries. These are not investments to retire on. You can't build a portfolio of shampoo. But in the acute phase of a collapse, when the credit card machines stop working, these are the things that trade. Category 5. Calorie production, farmland. Ultimately, all value derives from energy and biology. Farmland produces the one thing you cannot negotiate with, the need to eat. In the Great Depression, farmers were poor, but they didn't starve. However, farmland is visible. You cannot hide it. You cannot move it. Historically, when things get really bad, governments like to confiscate land or tax it into oblivion. Owning land is a great hedge against inflation, but a terrible hedge against revolution. These are not recommendations. They are observations of what was left standing in the rubble of Weimar, Harare, and Caracas. They represent the shift from financial assets to real assets.
We know what survives, but it is equally important to know what always dies. There is a category of assets that is mathematically guaranteed to go to zero in a currency reset. And terrifyingly, this is where most middle-class people keep their wealth. Fixed income, bonds, savings accounts. Any asset that promises you to pay you a fixed amount of a currency that is becoming worthless. If you own a 30-year government bond paying 4% interest and inflation hits 20%, you are vaporized. You are the frog in the boiling water. The nominal value of your bond stays the same. The government will pay you back every single penny they promised, but the money they pay you back with won't buy a stick of gum. This is the soft default. Governments almost never choose a hard default where they tell you, sorry, we aren't paying. They choose the soft default,
where they pay you back with confetti. Being a creditor to a failing sovereign is not conservative investing. It is optimistic to the point of delusion. It relies on the belief that the politicians will choose to bankrupt themselves rather than dilute you. History shows they never make that choice. If you are holding large amounts of cash or bonds in a system that is printing money to survive, you are not an investor. You are the donation.
So, what do you do? I told you I wouldn't give you a checklist, and I won't, because by the time you realize you need the checklist, the shelves are usually empty. The most valuable asset in a structural shift is not gold or Bitcoin or land. It is pattern recognition. Preparation is not prediction. Preparation is early recognition. You need to be able to see the signals before they hit the front page of the news. What does the pattern look like? Watch for capital controls. When the government starts making it hard to move your money out of the country, the door is closing. That is the first bell. Watch for parallel exchange rates. When the official price of $1 is 10, but the guy on the street corner is charging 20, the system has fractured. The truth has moved to the black market. Watch for the blame game. When politicians start blaming speculators or hoarders or foreigners for rising prices, they are admitting they have lost control of the printing press. Watch for shortages, not just of luxury goods, but of basics. When price controls are enacted to fight inflation, supply vanishes. Empty shelves are a monetary phenomenon, not a logistical one. The wealthy move before these signals become obvious. They convert their cash to assets. They move their jurisdiction. They secure their exit valves. The middle class waits until the panic starts, and by then, the spread is gone. You don't need to be a fortune teller. You just need to be observant. If you see the bakery changing prices while you stand in line, don't ask why. Get out of the line. Let's rewrite the narrative one last time. The collapse of a currency is not the end of the world. It is the end of an illusion. The systems we build are fragile. They rely on trust, and trust is a renewable resource until it isn't. But the underlying reality, the land, the factories, the human ingenuity, that remains. The silent depression isn't just about things getting expensive. It is the sound of a 50-year-old currency system reaching the end of its mathematical lifespan. You can choose to view this with fear. You can build a bunker and hide. Or you can choose to view it with clarity. History does not repeat events perfectly, but it repeats structures perfectly. And those structures reward the same positions every single time. They reward the owners. They reward the producers. They reward the adaptable. And they punish those who cling to the paper promises of a dying era. The world doesn't end. The system reloads. Ownership transfers. The question is not if the transfer happens. The question is, when the music stops, will you be holding a chair or just a pocket full of paper?